Elementary school, grades 4 and 5, 9 and 10 years old. Physical characteristics, elementary grades. Both boys and girls become leaner and stronger. In general, there is a decrease in the growth of fatty tissue and an increase in bone and muscle development. In a year's time, the average child of this age will grow about 2 to 3 inches and gain about 5 to 7 pounds. As a result, a typical child will tend to have a lean and gangly look. Although the average 9-year-old boy is slightly taller and heavier than the average 9-year-old girl, this difference all but disappears a year later. And from age 11 until about 14 and a half, girls are slightly heavier and taller than boys. Because secondary sex characteristics have not yet appeared, boys and girls can be mistaken for one another. This is particularly likely to happen when girls have close-cropped hair, boys have very long hair, and both genders wear gender-neutral clothing. Obesity can become a problem for some children of this age group. Because 9 and 10-year-olds have more control over their eating habits than younger children do, there is a greater tendency for them to overeat, particularly junk food. When this eating pattern is coupled with a relatively low level of physical activity, mainly because of television watching, computer use, and playing video games, and a genetic predisposition towards obesity, children become mildly to severely overweight. Between 1976 and 1980, 6.5% of children from 6 to 11 years of age were judged to be overweight. By 2004, that percentage increased more than 2.5 times to 17.5%. Not only do overweight children put themselves at risk for cardiovascular problems and type 2 diabetes later in life, but they also become targets for ridicule and ostracism in the present from peers. Although small in magnitude, gender differences in motor skill performance are apparent. Boys tend to outperform girls on tasks that involve kicking, throwing, catching, running, broad jumping, and batting. Girls surpass boys on tasks that require muscular flexibility, balance, and rhythmic movements. These differences may be due in part to gender role stereotyping. That is, because of socialization differences, girls are more likely to play hopscotch and jump rope, whereas boys are more likely to play baseball and basketball. Both boys and girls attain mastery over large and small muscles. One benefit of this is a relatively orderly classroom. 4th and 5th graders can sit quietly for extended periods and concentrate on whatever intellectual task is at hand. Another benefit is that children enjoy arts and crafts and musical activities. This is a period of relative calm and predictability in physical development. Growth in height and weight tends to be consistent and moderate. Hormonal imbalances are absent. Disease occurs less frequently than at any other period, and bodily coordination is relatively stable. A brief summary of the types of behavior stressed by the theorists discussed in the preceding chapter is found in Table 3.3. Applying theories of development to the elementary grade years. Psychosocial development, industry versus inferiority. Keep students constructively busy. Try to play down comparisons between best and worst learners. Cognitive development, concrete, operational. Except for the most intellectually advanced students, most will need to generalize from concrete examples or concrete experiences. Moral development, morality of constraint, transition from pre-conventional to conventional, a shift to viewing rules as mutual agreements is occurring, but official rules are obeyed out of respect for authority or out of a desire to impress others. General factors to keep in mind. Initial enthusiasm for learning may fade as the novelty wears off and as the process of perfecting skills becomes more difficult. Differences in knowledge and skills of fastest and slowest learners become more noticeable. Automatic respect for teachers tends to diminish. Peer group influences become strong. Social characteristics, elementary grades. The peer group becomes powerful and begins to replace adults as the major source of behavior standards and recognition of achievement. During the early school years, parents and teachers set standards of conduct, and most children try to live up to them. But by grades 4 and 5, children are more interested in getting along with one another without adult supervision. Consequently, children come to realize that the rules for behavior within the peer group are not quite the same as the rules for behavior within the family or the classroom. Because children of this age are increasingly concerned with being accepted by their peer group and do not have enough self-assurance to oppose group norms, there is a noticeable increase by both boys and girls in gossip about others. On the other hand, children who are accepted by a peer group and have friends within that group are more likely than rejected and friendless children to have higher levels of motivation, grades, and test scores. Friendships become more selective and gender-based. Elementary grade children become even more discriminating than primary grade children in the selection of friends and playmates. Most children choose a best friend, usually of the same gender. These relationships, based usually on common ideas, outlooks, and impressions of the world, may last through adolescence. Although children of this age will rarely refuse to interact with members of the opposite sex, when directed to do so by parents and teachers, they will avoid the opposite sex when left to their own devices. Play continues to make numerous contributions to children's development. In describing some of the characteristics of preschool and kindergarten children earlier in the chapter, we noted the importance of play activities to several areas of development. Play is no less important at this age level. The benefits that elementary grade children reap when allowed to play their own games include refining the skills of self-direction and self-control, learning how to join the play activities of others, and fostering the development of such cognitive skills as planning and using symbols. So, despite the accountability pressures that are so characteristic of education today, we discussed this at length in Chapter 15, efforts should be made to include opportunities for free play during the school day. Emotional characteristics, elementary grades. During this period, children develop a more global, integrated, and complex self-image. Researchers who study self-perceptions distinguish among the concepts of self-description, self-esteem, and self-concept. A self-description is simply the way in which people describe themselves to others. Self-descriptive statements are largely, but not entirely, free of evaluative judgments. Examples of self-descriptions are, I am 11 years old, I am tall for my age, and I am an outgoing person. Self-esteem, or self-worth, as it is sometimes called, refers to the overall or global evaluation people make of themselves. It is indicated by such statements as, I believe that I am a worthwhile person, and I am pretty happy with myself. Self-concept refers to the evaluative judgments people make of themselves in specific domains, such as academic performance, social interactions, athletic performance, and physical appearance. It is indicated by such statements as, I have a good head for math, I have a hard time making friends, and my big nose makes me look ugly. Taken together, self-description, self-esteem, and self-concept constitute a person's self-image or self-portrait. By middle childhood, each of these aspects of self-image is present. Children can make an accurate self-description, construct a global evaluation of themselves, and specify their positive and negative attributes in specific domains. There are several important facts to keep in mind about the formulation of a child's self-image. First, in elementary grade children, self-image is more generalized or integrated than is the case for primary grade children because it is based on information gathered over time, tasks, and settings. A child may think of herself as socially adept, not just because she is popular at school, but because she has always been well-liked and gets along well with adults as well as peers in a variety of situations. It is this generalized quality that helps make self-portraits relatively stable. Second, comparison with others is the fundamental basis of a self-image during the elementary grades. This orientation is due in part to the fact that children are not as egocentric as they were a few years earlier, and are developing the capability to think in terms of multiple categories. Also because competition and individualism are highly prized values in many Western cultures, children will naturally compare themselves with one another. I'm taller than my friend, as well as with broad-based norms. I'm tall for my age, in an effort to determine who they are. This social comparison process can have detrimental effects on a student's academic self-image when he or she moves from a classroom or school where most classmates are perceived to be less capable to one where most of his or her classmates are perceived to be more able learners, the so-called big fish, little pond effect. Third, in the elementary grades, the self is described for the first time in terms of emotions: pride, shame, worry, anger, happiness, and how well they can be controlled. Fourth, a child's sense of self is influenced by the information and attitudes that are communicated by such significant others as parents, teachers, and friends, and by how competent the child feels in areas in which success is important. The implications of this fact will be discussed in many of the remaining chapters of the text. Because major developmental changes usually do not occur during the elementary grades, a child's self-image will remain fairly stable for a few years if there are no major changes in the child's home or social environment. But as you will see later in this chapter, the developmental changes that typically occur during the middle school and high school grades often produce dramatic changes in the sense of self. Disruptive family relationships, social rejection, and school failure may lead to delinquent behavior. Gerald Patterson, Barbara DeBerche, and Elizabeth Ramsey marshal a wide array of evidence to support their belief that delinquent behavior is the result of a causal chain of events that originates with dysfunctional parent-child relationships. In their view, poor parent-child relationships lead to behavior problems, which lead to peer rejection and academic failure, which lead to identification with a deviant peer group, which results in delinquent behavior. Parents of such children administer harsh and inconsistent punishment, provide little positive reinforcement, and do little monitoring and supervising of each child's activities. Because these children have not learned to follow adult rules and regulations, but have learned how to satisfy their needs through coercive behavior, they are rejected by their peers, are easily distracted when doing schoolwork, show little interest in the subjects they study, and do not master many of the basic academic skills necessary for subsequent achievement. Attempts at short-circuiting this chain of events stand a greater chance of success if they begin early and are multifaceted. In addition to counseling and parent training, mastery of basic academic skills is important. Pause and reflect. The primary and elementary years correspond to Erickson's stage of industry versus inferiority. The implication is that educators should encourage a sense of industry and competence in each student. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you think schools accomplish this goal? What major factors account for your rating? Cognitive characteristics, elementary grades. The elementary grade child can think logically, although such thinking is constrained and inconsistent. In terms of Piaget's stages, upper elementary grade children are concrete operational stage thinkers. Some will have attained enough mastery of logical schemes that they can understand and solve tasks that involve such processes as class inclusion, understanding the superordinate, subordinate relationships that make up hierarchies, seriation, conservation, and symbolic representation, reading maps, for example, provided that the content of the task refers to real, tangible ideas that the child has either experienced or can imagine. But general and abstract ideas often escape the elementary age child. For example, sarcasm, metaphor, and allegory are usually lost on concrete stage thinkers. On tasks that call for simple memory skills, elementary grade children often perform about as well as adolescents or adults. But on tasks that require more complex memory skills, their performance is more limited. When tasks call for recognizing previously learned information, such as vocabulary words or facts about a person or event, or for rehearsing several items for immediate use, elementary grade children can perform about as well as older students. Relatively simple memory processes, such as recognition or rote repetition, approach their maximum levels by this point in cognitive development. But the same is not true for tasks that require such advanced memory processes as elaboration and organization. When asked to sort a set of pictures into categories, for example, elementary grade children create fewer and more idiosyncratic categories, which are generally less effective for later recall of the items in the category than do older children or adults. Also bear in mind that elementary grade children need constant practice on a variety of tasks before they use such memory processes consistently and efficiently. Middle school, grades 6, 7, and 8, 11, 12, and 13 years. I think I'll stop.